is this from the Comedians podcast?
No, this is from Calacanis's and the Venture Capitalist Bros podcast.
All
in. Because they're gamblers.
Was this the podcast where they basically admitted to doing a pump and dump?
Yeah, with Solana, Jacob Silverman has a famous clip where they're like joking about, are you holding that or are you getting out from under it early in sort of pump and dump style fashion?
You can't say that on a live stream. Well, I guess under Trump you can.
I'm not familiar with these guys or this podcast. I recognize the comedian in there.
Well, comedian,
Andrew Schultz.
He's a Rogan-verse guy who has parlayed that into a Netflix special, so he's promoting it on,
Wasn't he originally an MTV guy, too?
I feel like I actually think I saw him at the Comedy Cellar one time. But, regardless.
All right, sorry.
Regardless.
I've never thought he was funny, but he's a comedian, yes.
This is like, it's fascinating. And I think the guy is, he seems like a smart guy to me on some level. I saw a podcast, I think it was his, where he was talking about the Theocrat, the exchange on Jubilee with the Theocrat that I was in.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody sent me that, but they weren't really addressing what we were talking about, and they apparently didn't see what the premise of the thing was, which is when I was arguing, if you're a Theocrat, you're going to be happy about Donald Trump. I don't care about arguing the morality, the philosophical basis of my morality.
Haven't you read Foucault, sir?
I don't know what deontological means. At the end of the day, tell me what your policies are going to be. And if it involves women can't vote, I'm going to, regardless of the complete lack of the philosophical basis for my morality, I'm going to sign off. I'm going to depart in that moment.
Soy boy.
But the point is that these guys offer something which on its face sounds enticing. And without knowing the history of this proposal, this is what George W. Bush tried to do in 2005. Without understanding the reasons why we have Social Security and what it's supposed to provide for our retirement, you can get sucked into this. So I want to go over this so you understand why this is such a bad idea.
And regardless if the concept is good or not, the emotional connectivity to the success of American industry is really important. When you know at 22 that you could get this thing that's been compounding for 22 years.
All right, pause it for a second. Now, they're talking about retirement funds. Now, here's what we know. Prior to the 80s, most pensions were guaranteed benefit. That is as opposed to guaranteed contribution. Guaranteed benefit means that when you're 21, or whatever age you are, 18 or 24, you get a job, and they tell you part of your compensation package is that when you retire, 20 years, 25 years from now, you're going to get X dollars a month. $1,000 a month, $1,500 a month, $2,000 a month, whatever it is deferred compensation for you. Guaranteed, though, $2,000 a month. You can count on that. That is traditionally been one element of the three-legged stool that will provide for you in retirement. The other is just savings that you might have or assets. Maybe you bought a house and you sell it, you downsize, you take money from that. And the third is social insurance, which anchors it, and that is Social Security. That was the plan for Social Security. One leg of a three-legged stool, and it was the most secure one. In fact, so much so that they call it Social Security. In the 80s, because people didn't want to fund these pensions, they turned them into defined contribution. In other words, the amount of money that you pay in, that's defined. But the amount of money you get out, well, we're going to put it into the gambling thing.
We're going to leave it to the whims of the market.
To the market.
As opposed to being just a traditional defined benefit pension plan.
And they promoted things called 401ks.
Yep.
And if you Google the words, the failure of the 401k experiment, you will see that people, for better or for worse, left to their own devices, underfund their 401ks, pull money out of their 401ks. We are on the verge of a retirement crisis because of this. These are just starting to hit. People have been counting on these 401ks to hit retirement. 5 minutes of research will tell you what everybody on Wall Street knows. These things, they've enriched Wall Street people because somebody's going to manage them.
Yep.
Somebody's getting fees. But they have not provided for people's other legs of retirement. But they are thinking, what if instead of taking Social Security and investing it in treasuries like our government does, which is basically investing in the financial soundness of the most widely used currency in the world, the US dollar, what if we took all that money and put it into the stock market where we're going to get much higher returns? Listen to how they talk about it.
Get this thing that's been compounding for 22 years. You could pay off some college loans. You could put something down on a house. You could pay for trade school, whatever it is. I think you have a different energy towards America and its success. And then you have a lot less of these kids who are just like, America's this horrible place and capitalism is bad. Yeah, capitalism is bad when you're left behind. When you're invested in capitalism, it's
Okay, I'm sorry. This is actually perfect to pull up that chart just really quickly from FT. This is from Gallup data that's been aggregated from, it's a very small sample size of 70,000 people, according to the Financial Times. Views of young people in the United States on aspects of politics and society have deteriorated. And it's unfortunate Financial Times doesn't do the greatest y-axis, but it's all starting at 2010 to 2024. The respondents are age 15 to 29 years old, and it's a rolling 3 survey average. And you can see confidence in the judicial system tanked since 2010. Good affordable housing in the city. This is extremely material and borne out by data. Housing prices are as high as they've ever been and are a part of the cost of living crisis we're living in right now. Confidence in the national government plummeted. I mean, this is also Trump's
all
dynamic.
of this stuff basically starts around when Trump gets in office.
True, but experiencing stress. Some of this is cell phones and anxiety. But the point is that it is the lack of recovery still from the financial crisis, and now they're putting more money into crypto and sports betting. These young men that these guys are speaking to, trying to sell them the promise that they're saying, as opposed to building up our social programs like Social Security.
Well, here is Schultz's argument, is that you would get people to invest. If you get them to literally invest in America, it would raise that polling. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it was in response to that. He's making this argument.
Yeah, if everyone could get money for nothing, that'd be great.
I will also tell you that George W. Bush had a concept of ownership society. That this is all part and parcel, and it sounds sexy if you have skin in the game in American industry, and you see the wonder of compounding interest. Well, just play.
Absolutely, we're on the express train.
Let me give you guys. I did an analysis. I wasn't sure if I should put it out, but I'll tell you guys the numbers. The U.S. Social Security program is meant to be kind of the retirement program for folks that don't have access to private retirement accounts. Okay.
Pause it. That is a lie. That is not what it's meant to be. It's meant to be one leg of a 3-legged stool. It is supposed to be the anchor, the guarantee that you don't live in poverty. That's it. It's not to make you a millionaire. It's not to make it so that you can, winter in the Bahamas. It is to make sure that you do not end up literally eating cat food in your retirement. It was introduced because we had almost 2/3 of our elderly living in poverty. So he's lying about what Social Security is supposed to do. And it's the premise of everything that follows, which sounds reasonable as long as you have a wrong premise.
And he's also implying it's not universal.
Good.
Okay. And this program was set up in the 1930s after the Great Depression. And there's a trust fund the OA SDI, which is the fund that they invest the capital. So every year we all put money in with our Social Security taxes out of our paychecks, goes in there, and it gets invested. You know what it gets invested in? It gets invested in one thing, U.S. Treasuries, which have averaged about 4.8% return since the beginning of the program per year. Meanwhile,
What if you put it into the market?
meanwhile, the S&P has been averaging 11%. So here's the math. If in 1971, which was the year that we went off the gold standard in the United States, if we invested the Social Security Trust Fund in the S&P, the balance of the Social Security Trust Fund today would be $15 trillion. That would be roughly 1/3 of the value of the total S&P 500, which would be jointly owned by all Americans who took their capital. Now, here's what's up. What's up is that the middle class people who had access to private retirement accounts benefited by buying the S&P 500, and the wealthy were able to access it. So all of the equity value that accrued from American enterprise and the prosperity of the American system accrued to the people that had access to the private accounts. Meanwhile, the people that only had access to the public accounts got stuck owning treasuries. Today, the Social Security Trust Fund has $2.7 trillion balance, and based on the outflows and inflows, it's going to go bankrupt in 2032. That means Social Security is either going to get cut or the Fed's going to print a ton of money to keep Social Security benefits.
Retirement age goes up a little bit. Yeah, there's a lot of levers. Yeah.
All right, pause it. So some of what he's saying is true. Not necessarily print money. It could also be increased taxes on those same wealthy people who have had all this enjoyment. And the idea that somehow the middle class has also had access, they've had access to these things, but they don't have that much invested in it, frankly. And here's the key. The numbers that they're giving you, 11% over that time, is a backward-looking number, not a forward-looking number. We don't know what it's going to be in the future. And here's the other thing. If you can tell me with 100% assuredness, because this is, again, think about it as fire insurance. That's what this is. It is a social insurance program, and they want to convert it because they don't want there to be a floor on this. You put it in the stock market, and the reason why we have pension problems for municipal pensions and state pensions, and we had real problems with this in the teens, is because in the real problem and why we had so many pensions go bankrupt, and the U.S. government had to come in and bail it out. The last one being the UAW, is because if you tell me that I'm going to manage your pension, and how much money do you got to put in? Well, I'm assuming 11% return. What happens if it's an 8% return after 40 years? Or a 7% return? You don't put as much money in, and at the end of that, you find out I'm screwed. I'm absolutely screwed. I'll remind you, over the course of 90 years, a lot of people who retired in between those years. And so you can look over the course of 90 years and say it's 11% return, but maybe not for any type given 30 or 40 year period. And the point is, Social Security is an insurance program.
Yes.
It is to insure, not
Rate of return.
bet,
Right.
not bet,
Gamble.
not gamble, not maybe. It is to insure.
Right, but
that
that's
you
what the
don't
11.
live in poverty.
That's what the 11% represents. It's the heightened risk. That's what when he talks about the Treasury, it's because it's being invested in the Treasury because of the safety of it, as opposed to putting it into a gambling fund and getting higher rate of returns. When the 2008 crash happened, $2 trillion in retirement savings collectively lost by many economic metrics. But the people that were most affected were folks that were 60 years old or 61 or 62 who were about to retire. They didn't have the opportunity to have their retirement funds come back because the market renewed itself.
10, 12 years later.
I'm nearing retirement and my entire retirement is wiped out. So yes, eventually, since the 70s, the market, the economy goes up and it increases in value, and that's in part inflationary too. But the biggest problem is for retirees that are nearing retirement. when a crash is about to happen, which is what they're advocating for. And they're also, because they're crypto bugs, trying to undercut the value of like fiat currency being a stable thing to bet to basically invest a social insurance in, because they want it to be crypto gambleified.
And the reason why, incidentally, like, who's going to manage this fund?
Right.
People who are going to get fees from it.
That's what these guys bring to the table. And it's ironic they talk about, we posted those images of how people can't find houses since like the 2010 financial crisis. And it goes back to that Obama stuff we're talking about. Instead of giving money out to keep people in their mortgaged homes, we gave it to bankers. And a lot of the bankers gave it to guys like this, venture capitalists, to spend it around buying up different types of ideas, trying to monopolize stuff, and eventually even doing crypto scams. And that's what we get now, just speculators and
these are wealthy
charlatans.
people
Yeah.
trying to figure out how they, because there is going to be a reckoning in about 5 or 6 years, maybe 7 or 8, it depends on when that trust fund expires, because Social Security payments into the system will only provide 82% of promised benefits. We've already raised the age. If you are 10 years or 5 years older than me, your age of retirement is 65. You're 20 years older than me, it was 65. That's full benefits. For me, it's 67. For all you guys, it's 67. The age has already been raised. What they want to avoid is the pressure that is going to be for wealthy people to pay taxes on all of their income instead of just the first $176,000. And we should also be clear, we're also talking about businesses. Because in their system, it's unclear whether you're going to mandate corporations from putting in their 6.2% share. Why should we put in 6.2% share? We get an 11% return. Now we only have to put in, half of that amount of money, and they're going to get more money out of Social Security. That's the way it's going to go. You understand that, right? This is all a shell game. They want to avoid the pressure on taking up the cap. Right now, if you make $176,000, you pay 6.2% on $176,000. I don't know what that figure is.
It's like 171K.
Let's call it $13,000. Okay.
Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah.
If you make $400,000,
Paying the same amount.
you also pay $13,000. Yeah. If you make $4 million, you also pay $13,000. And these guys don't want you to know that. They don't want you to know that the answer to all of what they're saying, to provide insurance. You want to go have a 401k? Good luck. Most people don't have enough money at the end of the day to fund it. And if that 6.2% wasn't taken out of their paycheck, they still wouldn't. Unless you made it mandatory, and then you said, we're going to invest in something that is an absolute guaranteed rate of return.
What would that be?
Then all of a sudden you'd have Social Security.
Yeah.
Tesla stock was doing pretty well. We didn't just put it all on that.
Oh, that's a good point.
So these guys just want to basically obscure that point. It is rehashed stuff that we heard from George W. Bush, that we heard from Republicans for 90 years. They want to get rid of Social Security. They don't want to pay these taxes. That money doesn't have to be printed. It can be taxed. Social Security is statutorily unable to add to the deficit of the U.S. government.
Self-funding.
Self-funding. And the way that you can self-fund it is get rid of that tax cap.
Yeah, make it an actually flat tax. And people might know Andrew Schultz was mentioned in the first song of Kendrick Lamar's album GNX with the line, "Don't let no white comedian talk about no black woman, that's law." I think we could title this, "Don't let no white comedian talk about no Social Security," if that fits Dorsey. So check that out.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.